This is Niamh Bushnell from SoapBox Labs. With me is the CEO of SoapBox Labs, Dr. Patricia Scanlon, and also with me is Toby Mather, who is the CEO of Lingumi, an English language learning company in the UK. We've just signed a partnership with Lingumi, and we're here to discuss that with the two CEOs of the company. We're very excited about the partnership, Toby. Tell us all about Lingumi.
Thanks, Niamh. It's great to be here in Dublin. Lingumi is a preschool English language learning platform. It's our mission to make English learning affordable and effective for children all around the world, especially the non-English speaking world, before they reach their first primary school classroom. So we built a platform, an online platform, that families, typically non-English speaking families, use with their children aged 2 to 6 to get them up to a baseline level of spoken English before they get to their first classroom.
Wow, that sounds like something that SoapBox Labs can really help with, right, Trish? Tell us about SoapBox.
Okay, so it's a very well-aligned fit between us. So we built children's speech recognition software for young kids particularly, that we license to creators of products for children. And products such as literacy, English language learning, as well as toys and games and robotics on the more entertainment side. So it's very dual purpose there, and it's a very good fit for the age group and the product and the market fit as well.
So before we talk more about the partnership and how it's all working, what's your background, Toby? Where did all of this come from? Where did Lingumi come from? What's the passion that's driving this?
So the passion behind Lingumi and the idea behind Lingumi came from two things. My academic background was doing a bachelor's in modern languages at the University of Oxford in the UK. And while I was there, I was not only learning languages myself, but also began looking at the linguistics behind child language acquisition, how children began learning language, which was a pretty small part of what I was doing. A bigger part was a year that I spent teaching English in classrooms. And the children I was teaching in Russia and then in Italy were typically in groups of 25 or 30. They might have had 1 or 2 hours a week, and the parents were paying 20 or 30 pounds an hour for the privilege.
Right.
And at the time I thought, as their first English teacher on day one of English, we're really stacking the odds against the child by putting them in big groups, giving them such little and infrequent access and making it so expensive. And what I thought was, why don't I start work on a platform and on a learning method that would make English something that any family, anywhere, no matter their first language, can begin learning at home. So when the child got to the classroom, they came in and they said, I'm ready to go. I've got a baseline in this language and we can work on it from there.
Wow.
So I went back to Oxford for my 4th year and I kept researching this area. And then when I left Oxford, I met my co-founder, who's a computer scientist from UCL in London. And with that mixture of technical skills and the language and the practical linguistics background, we started work on the idea.
That's super. And Trish, you have a similarly compelling story. Tell us how SoapBox Labs came to be.
Right, so similarly academic.
More academic than me, I think.
Well, so I started out as an engineer, got into speech recognition. I was doing my PhD and working all my career in speech recognition, we used to call it. Now I look back, it was adult speech recognition, very predominantly. And then my daughter, when she was still 3, she wasn't even 4 at the time, was downloading these really cool apps and web services to do literacy, teaching up phonics, blending that early, very early stage of phonological awareness, phonics. And I just remarked that there'd been huge progress in personalized learning. And you could do that in any subject. You do maths, geography, teach all these things, colors, whatever. But the thing that was missing to me, and it was very obvious, was reading and language learning. That you couldn't possibly be able to assess a child, in an app or web service without speech recognition. And my background, I spent so many years working on it. I was thinking, why don't we have this? Why isn't there anything there for kids already? And when I started looking, it started to become more and more obvious. The focus had been on adults. The focus had been on adult speech, adult language, and adult patterns. And nobody was focusing on the kids. So if I was to look at a product that could be cost effective and scalable and actually teach literacy on a global scale or a very large scale, or English language learning, the element that was missing was speech recognition. Mm-hmm. And the great thing, once you've built a platform that works really well on that, you can actually also license it into toys and games and entertainment. But the bar is high in education and language learning. And it's a very hard problem to deal with the young kids.
Mm. And that was the piece that was missing was in the industry as a whole, assessment. Because the English language learning industry is dominated by assessment. But assessment in language learning is usually a test center. And it's usually done by reading and by writing. And preschool children below, let's say 6 years old, which is the average age a child might begin learning to read and write,
they're pretty
do that type of assessment.
Yeah.
And so what that means is there's an economic barrier for those sorts of kids to progress if we presume that progression involves assessment, because you need to pay a teacher to do it for you if the parent himself isn't a native language speaker. And the promise of technology, and by working together, a platform like ours with technology like SoapBox is to facilitate that kind of assessment to happen without the need for a teacher, and therefore massively reducing the cost to that kind of high quality educational experience and assessment experience.
Because it's like an educational experience. It's so high quality. It's like an educational experience in an educational setting, but actually done in the home, right?
Exactly.
So
and preschool children are not designed to sit in classrooms. What they like is exploring and playing and being at home with their parents or primary caregivers. And with learning experiences for preschool children, television can be great, and songs and videos, things like that can be great, but they don't make a huge cognitive impact. They don't bring a lot of learning. And it's because of this concept of response and interactivity. The Harvard Center for the Developing Child has done a lot of work on this idea of serve and return. If children get a response, it's very cognitively developmental and positive for them. And if you can give a more tailored response to that child based on some form of assessment, that's a very positive thing. Assessment sounds like a scary word. It sounds like we're giving a child a test to do, but actually assessment can be an interactive and a positive and a heartwarming experience.
And that was very much part of the genesis for the idea of what we built, was that it was watching my daughter and other children using, going, they need an immediate response. Can't be in an hour or 2 minutes. It has to be something that's fed back that they get. It's like a reward, and if you build it right, like we strongly think that Lingumi are building this right and doing that right feedback loop. It's great for the teachers and the parents to see the progress of the child, and that's lovely to close that loop so they see the value of what you build and the stuff you teach. But equally for the child to get that almost immediate feedback and a reward then, and then it doesn't feel like, and if it's done well, it doesn't feel like a test. It's that formative, invisible assessment that feels like a game.
And when we first integrated with SoapBox, it was amazing to watch when we put it out there into a production environment and we got some kids using it. The instantaneous thing when we gave the child an increasing animation of their score was the delight, and it was hands in the air clapping like this as the child saw their score going up. But of course, we were sensitive to designing around what happens if a child doesn't do so well. How do you make sure they feel rewarded? And that's what you have to focus on if you're developing a platform like ours for children.
And key to that is it can't be low accuracy. You're dealing with a child's, their motivation, their whatever, and to be honest, we've gone very deep in our technology, and we spent a lot longer developing this than we ever thought we'd have to, because it's a really hard problem. And the negative effects of doing it wrong, or somebody just pulling an off-the-shelf solution and jamming it into a language learning app and expecting that to work out, because the disappointment on a child's face when they know they've said it right.
Exactly.
And it's okay to get it if it's somewhat wrong or the odd time, but if you're doing that and giving the wrong feedback to a child consistently or more than a certain percentage, that's not going to motivate them, not going to continue. So we held back on releasing our product until we were sure.
And we've all used bad voice experiences and bad voice assistants where we've been frustrated, but as adults we know it's a failing in the technology. With a young child you need to make sure it works well. And when we found SoapBox, we looked at all the off-the-shelf available solutions, the adult solutions, and when we were testing SoapBox we were blown away by the accuracy level in real home environments where the child is screaming in the background and there's a baby crying and mum's walking past and someone's on the phone and the technology handled those situations with aplomb, and that was a big part of our decision to start the integration.
And if you hadn't found it, you would have been doing that kind of manual assessment. I mean, it just wouldn't work. I mean, you're the kind of the creative front end and all of that gamification and animation stuff that engages the kid. And then SoapBox is the accurate, real deep, based on very deep text score for how well they're pronouncing words and phrases and parts of words, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, language, of course, relies on assessment. And what we were doing with comprehensive language, so a child's understanding of things, was quite sophisticated assessment and a fairly big assessment model. But what we lacked was a really sophisticated production assessment. And by production, I mean spoken language. So we were going in and spot sampling recordings. We had, probably the world's biggest database of second language English speaking by infants, but we couldn't run automated assessment on that. And that was why we looked for a partner. And that's why we approached SoapBox.
Trish, the accuracy is based on over 6 years of work at SoapBox Labs. Children's voices from...
Again, my view of when we started and we all agreed on was that today's world is very different. You're not going to get, even in a New York City school, you're not going to get New York accents. Equally, you're not going to get the same accent in a city in China, because you've got people come from all over the place. So what we went for was for breadth and depth. So we went for thousands of hours of data from children from over 170 countries. We've got 50% probably from the US, we have from the highly represented in the UK, across Asia, all these countries. And by doing it that way, we knew we could handle the different accents. We knew we could handle if you're bringing it out in China. We really importantly wanted to be able to handle those background noises you were talking about, because being parents ourselves, most of us, a good percentage of us are parents in the company. We know a 3-year-old is never going to go quietly into a room, put on a headset mic and sit there and do 15 minutes of homework. That just doesn't happen. They're going to be on their tablet at the feet of their parents, most likely, with the dog barking and the TV on in the background. And we felt like we didn't want to build a product if it wasn't going to work globally, and it wasn't going to work in real world environments, and letting kids be more natural with how they interact. And to be honest, that's what took so long. But it was worth it, because we feel like we have something now, and we found the right partner here to be able to demonstrate that to the world.
Yeah, and certainly worth it for us to have a model that was flexible and that worked and that was robust. And in terms of the intelligibility versus accent, it's a debate we had too. We're a British company, we teach British English, but we don't punish children if they don't sound British. What we're trying to teach is for a child to make themselves understood in the English language. And so what that means is a comprehensible level of pronunciation, but not necessarily a British one or an American one or a Singaporean one. That matters less. The key thing is about being able to very quickly get to a level of English where you can make yourself understood in the global economy. And of course, we're not putting a 5-year-old out there into the global economy, but the age up to about 6 is where your palate is doing what's called palatalization in linguistics, where you're forming the muscles that make the sounds of the languages you're learning. And we all do it with our mother tongue. But phonemically, Chinese and English are very, very far apart. And it's why I find it so hard to say words like 学习 in Chinese, and why a Chinese child might find it hard to say the word carrot. And so getting them started early and getting them started with a model that supports their development is really important for us.
And what's nice about some of the conversations we were having today was about, it is important to be able to correct at the phonetic level. It's all well and good to say, give an overview of a score of how they said a particular word, but part of what we wanted to build was, it was interesting that, we teach kids to learn by phonics and phonological awareness and all these different building blocks. Computers learn speech recognition in the same way. So we build our tech in that way that we can actually give a breakdown and highlight which part of the word they're not saying correctly, because you don't want to penalise a child for not saying the word apple completely right. You want to be able to say, that wasn't bad. You did it okay, and maybe this is the area you need to work on, and that's kind of important.
Exactly. And to give a real world example of that, we compare in our data set, we have tens of thousands of kids using it every day around the world, and to compare in our data set, we can look at the phonemic reports coming out of SoapBox for kids in Taiwan versus kids in Italy or France or Germany. And say, for example, in Germany, a child might say dog with a hard consonant ending, but in Italy or Taiwan, they might say dog with a sound on the end of the word. And if we can get that back from SoapBox, it allows us to take those children in a certain direction with the curriculum we're providing them, and other children in another direction. But we could also do things like maybe test children on their pronunciation of whole phrase. And then if they're not quite ready to say a whole phrase, we can say, okay, don't worry, we can keep you on single words for now or 2-word utterances, and then we'll move you to phrases when you're ready. And so having that flexibility in the platform has been really helpful for us, and thinking about our curriculum development and unlocking greater levels of language and spoken language for children. And if we look at the industry, what we see is a lot of products that teach to some extent, but that don't really get kids speaking the language. And in language, the core skill, as I think we all agree, is your ability to speak it.
You brought up something there, Toby, that again in our conversations back across the road in the office was very exciting to me, which was not only is SoapBox providing you with that automated assessment that the kid can see and then clap to, but it's also kind of really driving part of your product roadmap, because the data that you're getting back from SoapBox is showing you where kids need more help with different games and tools that you're developing for them. So it's at that strategic level, it's massively important as well that you have that data from the automated assessments, right?
Exactly. And for us, there's two levels to how we're looking at and using assessment and speech assessment in particular. And one is the engagement level. Kids love getting that score back. They love giving that response. They love trying to perfect it. They turn it into a competition between them and their mum or them and their younger brother. But the other part is unlocking new types of teaching experiences for the child and new levels of language. And we can do both if we have a really robust scoring system. And that's what SoapBox has allowed for us.
It's hugely motivating, just even seeing the videos of the children using it and the delight and you've got so much community that you have on your platform that we were all thrilled to see. Like, it was beautiful to see it and seeing the delight of the kids and seeing how they share with each other. That's really quite unique in how you teach. Like, so, but it was lovely for us to see, but it was amazing to see that they share that with each other. Yeah, I really enjoyed that too.
Yeah, and actually there are a lot of theories in language learning and language acquisition that have been discredited over the years, and I would say, are at the forefront of maybe a new model of language acquisition. And part of that is about giving content in correct form to children. But a new part of it for us, and a big part that we're developing, is connecting children together. Because what we've seen is this linguistic concept that's called bootstrapping linguistics in action, which is one child learning from another child's example. And though their accent might not be perfect, the way that they string words together might be a very good example for this child. And if you have enough of those examples happening in children seeing other children, as well as seeing videos from me or learning with games in the app, that builds up the whole picture of English, the English language, much faster for that child.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to do it. Yeah, it's original, and yeah, we're delighted to be part of it. Actually, it's kind of cool.
So the solution obviously works. It's hand in glove. How is the integration when you came upon our API and you integrated? That was all easily done, and obviously your team were you kind of went ahead of us almost. We were seeing all this data coming, like where are all of these hits to our servers coming from, right? And it turned out
and it was quite a funny story, because we found SoapBox and we approached you guys about giving it a try, and we said we want to run some test data through it, but the fastest way to do that is we'll just put it in a couple of games on the platform, but not tell anybody. And we figured a few hundred children in a couple of days would hit those games and would send recordings in. But what actually happened was one mother in Taiwan found one of the games, and they enjoyed it so much that she took a video of her child using it and then posted it in one of our community groups for the Taiwanese families. And suddenly, I think, that day something like 800 requests came through. All these parents were so curious to see what was going on in this new game that they discovered. And so, well, apologies to you guys for sending so many through, but the service can handle it.
It happened so seamlessly, and I credit to your tech guys, because that was brilliant. Like, they just pulled it together, integrated it quickly. It all started happening, and it was lovely.
Yeah.
It was lovely. It was a delight, and you were sending us the videos of the reactions, and it was lovely to see.
And obviously, we're on a technical level working with a well-built distributed cloud infrastructure with really easy to use API has been a pleasure for us. And combining technical products together like that is usually not as smooth as it has been. So it's been that's great. It's been a fairly easy process.
I think credit to both tech teams then, because the lads built it. They built it very well.
Neither of us were spending much time writing.
No credit to us there.
So there is a social impact angle to both of these companies. Obviously, we're both for-profit companies, SoapBox and Lingumi, but we do see, English language learning. Talk to me about the power of young children learning English at an early age.
So English, I would argue, is the defining socio-economic skill for a young person in the world today. And in the UK or Ireland or the US, we might perceive as English as this widely spoken language, but actually 95% of children born today don't learn English in the home. And for those children, the global default is they wait till they get to primary school, if they're lucky, to begin learning English. But language acquisition happens very efficiently in infancy and doesn't happen very efficiently in adulthood, as we all know if we've tried using Duolingo as adults to learn Spanish or something. And I say it's the defining socioeconomic skill. I think there are two. One is English language, and one is computer science. As more and more jobs move away from manual labor and into the service layer, and especially into writing software and things like this, children need to be able to use computers and write software and also use English. But the reason I say that English is the defining skill is that the internet is written in English, computer code is written in English. And if you don't have a level of English early on in life, it delays your access to that secondary critical skill. And when we think about technology, we talk a lot about education technology should be the use of technology to bring down the cost and increase the quality and outcomes for children. But what I see in a lot of education technology is using the frame of technology as a way of increasing the cost while decreasing the quality. And there are other platforms that connect students directly to teachers online, real human teachers, but those teachers aren't necessarily always well-trained teachers. The content being taught isn't necessarily always that good. And also the cost is often very high for this new fancy bit of kind of tech platform. What we're trying to do is build a really truly scalable approach to English language learning that any family can use at 1/10 of the cost of a traditional solution. And we believe Lingumi costs right now about 10% of what you need to pay to get the same learning outcomes, say, from a language school. So that's what efficacy means, and that's what social impact means for us, dramatically reducing the cost and increasing the quality.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's kind of a similar, mission we had was that, we want to get our technology into the hands of as many kids as possible. We really believe speech technology can do cost-effective and scalable literacy and English language learning to democratize the access to education. You could have a child in Africa or in the US or in the UK or in Asia kind of learning of the same technology, the same platform, the same access without a huge cost. And sometimes scalability is not always about cost, it's just about lack of access, lack of teachers or lack of a parent to speak the language. Or, for us, we look strongly at literacy as well. Often it's a parent who doesn't read, or it's, or they don't have access to a teacher, or the teacher's not well trained in reading as well. Building this technology, we have the opportunity, to build successful companies, because like you said, we're for profit, and have a social impact in all these areas too. And that's huge to be mission driven like that. For us, it's motivation. I know when you get up in the morning, it feels better to be having an impact.
Absolutely. And I tell my team, I look forward to work on a Sunday evening because I feel like especially when we get videos through of kids using our product, and we see that there's learning outcomes coming, every day it feels like we're making progress or we're helping a child make progress, and that's very meaningful for us. I think in terms of what both SoapBox and Lingumi do at an impact level, this is really day one for education technology. Education technology is itself nascent, and it's not as developed as things like financial technology, which in some markets like China are enormously developed and permeate the whole of society. Education hasn't yet done that, and indeed I would say it's had a few false starts. What we need to do as a society, and this is going to be a wrenching thing to do, is disconnect the pedagogue, the teacher, from the learning itself. Partly because in the home environment, parents aren't perceived as teachers. But parents are a child's most impactful teacher. A child will never have a more impactful teacher. And so giving parents the tools to deliver learning in the home is really important. And that's what SoapBox does. For example, a parent might read, but they might not read English. SoapBox allows that sort of learning to happen. And that's what Lingumi does as well, by delivering a learning platform that a parent can read in their first language, but which gives everything to the child in English. And so we're not replacing teachers. It's just that when the child arrives in their first classroom with their first teacher, they've been prepared better, they can read better, they can speak better. And I can tell you, having taught in large classrooms, that is a huge, huge help to every single teacher.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I know for us, for SoapBox, we're helping the teacher in the classroom, in that formal education environment, to figure out who are the kids who may be left behind if they don't get extra help, or who are the kids that are struggling with different levels of literacy.
So give them all the practice that they need every day to, when you're learning, it's all about practice. So whether it's reading or it's English language learning, the more practice, and speaking out loud is such an important part of both those things. And so many things that are digital just don't involve that. So
it's passive and involve watching something.
Sitting watching a video, that thing is not, and it won't work for either. So the more you can get them, particularly at a young age, the more you can unlock the potential of a child on both sides, really, whether it's reading or language learning.
And looking also at the situation of the classroom, as a teacher, and if you look at a typical English class being taught, I might do something like put up a word and say to the children, "What's that?" And you might hear 10 cries of dog around the room. But what you can't do is separate out who's good and who's bad, who needs extra work and who doesn't, in a way that technology can do. But also your temptation as a teacher and your bias as a teacher is to spend more time with the kids who are better And this is, I think, widely observed in the teaching world, which increases the delta between the best kids and the worst kids. And you do it because you're trying to take pressure off yourself. And what technology will do is not be at all biased in that respect. It will work on every single child in that way.
Objective assessments, absolutely.
Yeah, well, you talk about that, Trish, about how our speech recognition technology for literacy can level the playing field in the classroom amongst a group of children, but also between kids in Kenya or Nigeria versus kids in Connecticut or New York, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like saying, the research is there. Say you catch a child before age 8. The idea is, I think the old way of doing it, and the US is big on assessment, was that, you're doing your assessments, but then you're kind of picking them out then, they're the kids needing intervention, but it's kind of too late. Equally like learning a language, if you leave it too late, you're never going to be the native speaker. So if you can give somebody, and the younger the better on all sides really, like the younger you can start teaching a child and give them the regular practice. So I kind of think it's an interesting, a child could be a gifted reader, but then they're bored in the classroom, or they're in the English language learning class and they know that already, but they're in a class full of 30 kids, so what are you going to do? And the child is struggling. It runs the full gamut of children like that. That personalised learning should accommodate that they can go on their own path and they can progress at their own rate.
And a big part of the problem with personalised learning, and it's had a mixed history, I would say, as a term. We've seen some successes, but we've seen maybe more high-profile failures, especially in recent years, is as the provider of the technology to the consumer, it is difficult to build the entire stack. And as something gets really challenging technically, it gets harder and harder to do the whole thing. And I think that we've had great deep technology companies that haven't been able to build great consumer interfaces. And we've had great consumer companies that haven't been able to build great deep technologies. And the reason we chose to work together is because we knew what we were good at. And we knew that we could make an impact faster and get things to market faster by working together on it. And it's, that's exactly what we've done. I'd say we are, in terms of the platform we've built, it's certainly the best possible way for a child to start English for a reasonable cost. And in terms of SoapBox's technology, it absolutely is the best technology in the speech detection and comprehension world for children.
Yeah.
Great. So, it just sounds like we're going to do more work together. We're going to build new products together, empowered by SoapBox's technology on the automated assessment side and helping you with your roadmap. And it sounds like it's
called a win-win.
Open, right? More opportunities.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before we finish up this great conversation?
No, I'm looking forward to. I really enjoyed today. I really enjoyed seeing what you're coming out with, what you have done, the feedback. So I'm very excited to see what we can do. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, and I think for us, finding a fellow European company to work with and produce, I would say, some of the world's leading education technology has been really exciting. There's a lot of talk in the US about education technology and in China about education technology. But I think we in Europe and between Ireland and the UK here are developing one of the most explosive and powerful pieces of education technology. And I'm extremely biased, but that I've ever seen or put my hands on. And I've been following the field for a while now. And so I'm incredibly excited to keep bringing out these new features that we're working on, which we're not going to mention today, and show the world and show our users some pretty powerful things.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So watch this space for SoapBox Labs and Lingumi, the partnership that continues to do amazing things the world over for kids. Thank you both very much.
Thanks, Steve.